Hi, Julie Jones from SSB Performance, Smarter, Stronger, Better Mindset Training, here with this week's Mindset Made Simple Tip of the Week, brought to you by Game Day Sportswear and On Point Pest Control. This week we're talking about change. Whether we like it or not, change is coming for all of us. And it's the end of the spring sports season. We're coming up on the end of fiscal years for a lot of businesses. So with that comes change. Fall sports, winter sports have already gone through the coaching carousel that happens at the end of every season. They've already started to think about the change that's going to be inherent in their next teams. They're getting to work with what's left of the teams that they have after their seniors go. But no matter what, whether we were given change or we come upon change by choice, or by whether it was chance or it was crisis, when we lose our job, that's a crisis. Change is coming for all of us. I just read on Facebook or on social media at some point over the past weekend that two coaches that I know were let go from their jobs, and they both had winning record in their conference and winning records overall in their careers, but they're gone. They don't have a job anymore. And that is the way of the world in coaching today. We know that every conference can only have one champion. Well, maybe two if the conference champion doesn't win the conference tournament. But the bottom line is that leaves a lot of people on the hot seat. Wade Gilbert, who wrote the book Coaching Better Every Season, says there are three types of coaches. Coaches that just got hired, coaches that just got fired, and coaches that are on the hot seat. And if you're not winning now, you're not winning at all, you are feeling a little heat on the backside. That is just the way that it is. And that means change. In fact, when I got my first head coaching job, I was 25 years old. Dave Beckman, who was our associate AD, had been an NFL scout and all around athletics in his career, he told me right before I even walked out the door to go over to my office and celebrate the fact that I had just become a head coach, he said, "Coaches are hired to be fired. Welcome to the club." But even if you weren't fired, even if you didn't move on by choice, you have change coming as well. You don't have your 6 seniors that you just graduated. You don't have your number 1 player who just transferred to somebody else's team in the conference thanks to the transfer portal. There is change. It's inevitable. We know that the only constant in life is the fact that it's going to change. Change is all around us. It's our constant companion as leaders and coaches. There is always something coming up. But our brain doesn't like change. In order for us to manage change, we have to understand how our brain works through change. Change incites or excites the same pathways that pain does. According to Dr. David Rock, co-founder of the Neuro Leadership Institute, he says that the brain perceives change as a threat because it disrupts our sense of certainty and control, and this triggers a stress response. It makes us feel uncomfortable. It makes us feel anxious and resistant. Think about it. Every time you ask somebody to change, whether you're working with a kid on their hitting stance and you need to change their timing, or whether you're changing the way that they throw or pass with their feet or their hands, automatically you can sort of feel that, I'm not so sure. We like what we do, even if it doesn't work sometimes. That is our brain's way of functioning. It's not really even our choice. It's just how we're wired. Dr. Rock he says, and I quote, "Change lights up the same areas of the brain that light up during physical pain. No wonder people often try to avoid it. We know we aren't physically hurt, but the parts of the brain that manage pain don't know the difference. We will shy away from getting our hand hit with a hammer. We do the same thing to the emotional pain that comes with change." And you think pain, uncertainty registers as pain. And every change, whether someone said, "No, thank you, we were going to hire somebody else," or, "Oh my gosh, all these guys graduated, now what are we going to do?" Those things elicit responses in our brain that we don't manage, or we don't control, but we can manage. Maybe I should put it that way. In order to navigate change successfully, just like everything else that we talk about, we have to be able to manage and understand our mindset. Our brain's number one job is to keep us safe. Whenever there's uncertainty, it goes into protect mode. And we become almost defiant. We become resistant. We become uptight and anxious. And that is the way that we're built. It's not because you're crazy. It's not because you're stubborn. But we can manage this if we want to. It starts with going from a fixed mindset that this is just the way that it's going to be, or the cognitive distortions that we talked about last week, and letting those or acknowledging those and moving to the growth mindset. Losing our job's a huge threat. It's a threat to our ego. It's a threat to our bank account. Add in the fact, right, people don't realize when they are cheering that a coach got fired, that if it happened to them, they would hope that people weren't cheering, because the added pressure of understanding that you just lost a whole bunch of money really, really, really throws you into uncertainty. So everybody that cheers when a coach gets fired, I hope that doesn't happen to you. Everybody that cheers when a coach gets fired, even when they were winning, just think about that. If someone walked into your accountant office, if you're an accountant, and said, you know what, you're doing your job, but you're done. You want people to cheer for that? No, of course we don't. But it's a threat regardless. When it happens, it's a big deal. When your seniors graduate, it's a big deal. When you lose a kid to a portal, it's a big deal. But we can manage all these situations if we can manage the way that we think about it, because we know the way we think affects the way we feel, which affects the way we act. And if we're thinking in a certain way, we're going to act in a certain way. And certain things are helpful and certain aren't. There are things in our circumstances that we can't change immediately. Maybe there's something we can't, maybe there's really not anything we can do right at this moment to make things better. But there are always a whole host of things that we can do to make them worse. So we want to talk about ways that we can manage these things that aren't so great, or that present us with uncertainty, present us with the need to change. What can we do about that and move forward and be our best on the other side of this? We can't erase the past, so what's next? All right? What's next? We talk about that all the time. What's important now? It all comes down to the way that we think. Choosing our mindset matters. If there's ever a time to embrace Dr. Dweck's growth mindset, this is it. Especially if the change came to us without our approval or without us asking for it. Dr. Dweck suggests that focusing on what we learn from each change rather than the fear of the unknown can be very helpful. She says, and I quote, in a growth mindset, challenges are exciting rather than threatening. Now, losing your job, not necessarily exciting, but it does open up doors to other things. She goes on to say that, so rather thinking, oh, I'm going to reveal all my weaknesses through this, which is where we go immediately, because that goes to our ego. Oh my gosh, I'm not the head coach at so-and-so anymore. What am I going to do? Weakness. That's what we think everybody sees. We say, hey, wow, here's a chance to grow. This doesn't put your 400 hitter back into the lineup. This doesn't put your starting infield that were full of seniors back into the lineup. This doesn't put food on the table. But it does allow us to look at our obstacles as opportunities for what's to come next year or in our next place. As someone once told me, sometimes God moves you when you won't move yourself. And if that's the case, we need to ask, where are we being moved? And then we'll talk more about asking questions. But if we're not willing to look to see where we're being moved, we can't change and grow. Because the brain's first job is to protect us, we usually become protective and resistant and frustrated and even pissed, if you really want to come right down to it. Sometimes flat out afraid. But if we can see what's possible, we can make our team better, we can make ourselves better. Another thing that we need to do, besides manage our mindset when we're looking at change, is break things down into manageable steps. We know that when something is overwhelming, we just stop. As you hear Brian Cain, the mental performance coach, say often, it's the start that stops most people. I think about my workouts. If I break it down into 3 15-minute sort of sections, it doesn't seem nearly as daunting as saying, you know what, I've got to go in there and work out for 45 minutes. It's breaking things down into small things. I mean, think about it. Even Jesus started small. 12 people, changed the world, seemed to work for him. We need to understand that what do we need to do today? What small thing do we need to do today that will set us up to do better tomorrow? What small thing can we control? What small thing can we influence? Stephen Covey, author of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, reminds us that focusing on the circle of influence, the things we can control rather than the circle of concern, the things that we're worrying about, reduces our stress and increases our effectiveness. What can we control? Draw a line down your brain. Can't control this, can control this. I can influence this even though I can't control it because I get to decide. My response influences what happens next. I don't control everything, but I do control how I respond to everything. And that is where our power begins. When we lose our job or when we lose part of our team, we feel like we've lost some control. And we need to go back to what can we control. Those are things that are out of our control. Ultimately, we don't determine results. We don't determine other people's choices, but we can control how we respond to them. Tying it back to managing our mindset, when we think about breaking things down, we can keep that simple too. Robert Maurer says in the book, One Small Step Can Change Your Life, and Tony Robbins in Awaken the Giant Within talks about asking simple, quality questions. Questions put our brains on alert for solutions. Questions keep us out of a victim's mentality. They move us toward action. They move us toward purpose. They move us toward options. Dr. Maurer says that small questions create a mental environment that welcomes unabashed creativity and playfulness. Not that we feel playful when things are in change, but we need some creativity. We need to see options that are around us or make options out of opportunities. He goes on to say that when you ask small questions of others, you channel that creative force toward team goals. But by asking small questions of ourselves, we lay the groundwork for a personalized program for change. He goes on to say that when life gets scary and difficult, we tend to look for solutions in places where it's easy or at least familiar to do so, and not in the dark, uncomfortable places where the real solutions might lie. And I think the only way to find the light is to move around carefully, of course, because we're in the dark, so that we don't trip. But we need to asking questions keeps our eyes wide open so that we can see the light shining through. What questions can you ask to help move yourself forward? 3 good questions to ask are these, very simple, and I'm sure you've heard this before. What do I need to stop doing or do less of if I want to reach my goals? What do I need to start doing or do more of? There's really 6 questions in here maybe, or 5 at least. So what do I need to stop doing or do less of? What do I need to start doing or do more of? And then what do I need to sustain? What do I need to keep doing? Because no matter what, whether it was a great season or a horrible season, there are things in there that have to stay. And when we're faced with a bunch of change, we think we've got to throw everything out. As my great-grandfather used to say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Making big change. We don't need to do that. There are things that need to stay. What do we need to stop, start, and sustain? Another thing that we can do is we can run what businesses do. We can do a SWOT analysis. What's a SWOT analysis? Evaluate our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, our threats associated with next year's team or our ability to go do something different. Right? This comprehensive assessment allows us to look at things through fact, not through emotion. Not from this environment that has us all stirred up. But what's the truth? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? And what do I need? Where are my threats? What is something that comes in that I need to plan for? It's really important to keep ourselves thinking strategically and functionally so that we can manage the emotion that is inevitable in change. We aren't responsible for everything that happens to us, around of us, or even because of us. But we are responsible for the mindset and the systems that we use to respond to those things. That is within our control. No one or nothing makes you do anything. It's always our choice on how we're going to respond to what's in front of us. I'm not saying that makes it easier. Trust me. I've been there. But the bottom line is that how we look at it. I'm lucky. I always had someone beside me saying, you can do anything. What is it that you want to do? What opportunities lay in that area? What does this look like? All right? We have to be able to do that for ourselves as well. The only constant in life is change. And every season brings new changes and new challenges. No matter how uncomfortable, we have to remember that change is not the enemy. It's a path to growth. John Maxwell, and I'm sure you all heard of John Maxwell, the leadership expert, says, change is inevitable, growth is optional. If we choose growth, we will end up without our seniors, without that kid that went in the portal, without this specific job. We will end up exactly where we need to be. It takes some mindset, it takes some evaluation, and it takes some emotional control, which both of those other things allow us to do. And there is always opportunity. We know that. We just don't feel it all the time. So no matter where you are at the end of this season, and for those of you still playing, congratulations. And congratulations to the Cleveland State Vikings, to the UNCW Hawks, to the Youngstown State Penguins, to the Baldwin Wallace Yellow Jackets, to all the teams that I love and work with on your appearances in the NCAA tournament and winning your conferences. And congratulations to all of you for making it through another academic year. And understand that no matter what happened, next year is going to be different. You know that. And that's okay. Because if you face it with the right mindset and the right systems, then you're going to end up doing it exactly how you want to do it. And that's really important. So until next week, I look forward to working through this next week of change and all the things that come down the pike in the coaching carousel that moves around and around. And if you need to change your mental game training approach, reach out. Let's set up a program for you. Have a great week.